minutes to find it. If you don't have a Bible, there's one in the pew, but I'd like everybody to have one today, if you don't mind. Zechariah. Did you get it? I don't think everybody did yet, so I'll just wait a minute. Chapter 12. Zechariah chapter 12. We're going to talk about the day of the Lord and what's going to be the future for the nation of Israel. Somebody told me the other day that all the Jews are going to be killed. It's not true. And I'm going to prove it this morning scripturally. Chapter 12. Now, Zechariah was a prophet. He was a prophet after the people came back from the exile. You'll know if you come Sunday night, we've been talking about post-exilic people. They were taken into captivity in Babylon, and they were brought back in 3 different times. Zechariah was a prophet at the time. He only prophesied for probably 2 years, and they killed him. He was killed in the temple, between the altar and the temple. So basically, he didn't have a lot of time to prophesy to the people. But what he has to say is a wide scope of things. And I want you to listen. If you have a pen this morning, you might want to circle some things I'm going to tell you about. Now, there's a phrase that's used a bunch of times in chapters 12, 13, and 14. The phrase is, in that day. In that day. The day they're talking about is the day of the Lord, when Jesus Christ comes back. Who's coming back with him? We are. He's going to come back on a white horse, and he's going to come back to judge. And that's what in that day means. You'll see it a lot. All right. Now, Israel, the country, is in the middle of a bunch of hostility. Every one of the countries around Israel hates them. It's about the size of New Jersey. It's not real big, but it's kind of the pinpoint, and it is the center of the world, believe it or not. Israel is the exact center of the world. There's a lot of anti-Semitism. We talked last Sunday night about anti-Semitism. It's not politically correct to make fun of the Jewish people. It's not politically correct to talk about them, make jokes about them. But Zionism, which is the hatred of the nation state of Israel, is very, very prominent today. People hate Israel. They also hate the Jewish people, and you know that. Now, we're going to talk this morning about the final attack against the nation of Israel. Now, it all comes from God. We're going to see that. There's no one else that orchestrates this. If you'll notice, look in verse 1, we'll start there. Chapter 12, verse 1. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens, layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, now here's what you need to look at. It says, I will make. In chapter 3, I make, or verse 3, I make. In verse 4, I will smite. Verse 4, I will open. I will make, verse 6. Do you see who's running things here? God is, completely. Satan has a part, man has a part, but God is the one that's making things happen, okay? Behold, verse 2, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Now there's coming a time when every army in the world is going to come against Jerusalem. Now when it talks about Judah and Jerusalem, that's talking about the city of Jerusalem, but also the whole area of Israel, Judah, okay? Now, look at verse 3. In that day, what day is it? The day of the Lord, when he comes back. In that day, I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. A burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the faith be gathered together against it. What does that stone mean? Well, in those days, they had weightlifting contests. Did you know that? And what would they lift in order to see who wins? The heaviest stone. So if you were a weightlifter during the time of this, you're going to see if you could lift the heaviest stone, you would win. Now, it says here that they shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. How many people on the earth are gathering themselves against Israel? All. Every army, every person. And what the stone has to do is, the word means that if you lift the stone and it's too heavy, it will cut you, it will rupture you, it will tear you. Okay, that's what that means, the heavy stone. This is the battle of all ages. Now, there's a flat basin. Look at verse 4. In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse and astonishment, and his rider with madness. I will open, there it is again, mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. There is a valley, and it's described as a cup, but it's not a cup like we think of it. It's a basin, and it's called the Valley of Megiddo. Anybody ever heard of it before? That's the valley where the Battle of Armageddon takes place. And you will realize that everybody, all armies, all peoples are gathered against Israel, against Jerusalem. And it says that the Lord is going to come, and he's going to cause every horse with astonishment, or is there another word for that? Tom, do you have in your translation? Yeah, verse 4. Confusion. Okay. In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with confusion, and his rider with madness. Now think about it. The transportation they have are horses. If every horse is confused or crazy, you ever been on a crazy horse? They don't stop. They don't do what you want them to do. And on these crazy horses, there's going to be riders that are going to be mad, and they're going to be blind. Okay, now who does this? What's it say in verse 4? I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. A blind, crazy horse is all you see. They're all in the valley in this basin of Armageddon. Do you think there's going to be confusion? Do you think there's going to be people killing each other because they can't see and the horses are crazy? The governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength in the Lord of hosts, their God. This is not happening in Jerusalem. It's happening in Judah, which is the basin that we're talking about. Now, if Jesus comes back, what's he going to do to all these people? Anybody know? He's going to kill them, right? Judge them and kill them. Will it be easier for him to do this if they're blind and their horses are confused? Makes sense, doesn't it? Verse 6, in that day will I make the governors of Judah like a hearth of fire among the wood, like a torch of fire in a sheaf. And they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. They used to carry a bucket of hot coals wherever they went, and that would help them to start fires. So Judah, when this all happens, Israel, where all these people are attacking, they're going to be burned up with fire. Now, let's look, if we could, in another place. Can you keep your finger here so you don't lose it? And turn to Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3. It's only like a book or two back. Joel chapter 3. And this will reinforce what I just said about the day of the Lord. Chapter 3. Everybody find Joel? It's not bad. 2 books back, I think. Or maybe more than 2. Joel, Amos, Obadiah. What is it? It's after Hosea, which doesn't help you at all. Look in the index if you can. I won't squeal. For behold, in those days, chapter 3, and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Verse 2, I will also gather all nations, will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, that's what we're talking about, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage among the nations, and pardon my land. How many people are going to be here in this valley? The whole world, folks. All right, now, if you look in verse 9, proclaim this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, and all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. You've heard that saying before. Assemble yourselves, come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither, because thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be awakened, come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. What is Jesus coming back to do? To judge. I will make, I will open, he's coming to judge. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, and their wickedness is great. Multitudes and multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Again, another word meaning Armageddon. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of his children of Israel. He's coming to judge. The blood is going to be higher than a horse's bridle. That's how much slaughter there's going to be. Now, who is he? Who is the Lord judging? Born again, Bible believing Baptists? Where are we at this time? We're in heaven. The whole world is wicked. There's going to be armies coming from the revived Roman Empire from the west. There's going to be people coming from the north, Russia, Ukraine, all those states. There's going to be Arab nations coming from the east. You see, Jerusalem is surrounded by Arab nations. They hate them. And the Chinese are going to be coming across too from the east. And then from the south, you've got more Arab nations, Egypt and others. North, south, east, and west. They're all coming to meet where? In Jerusalem, in Judah. And they're all coming for the same reason. What is the reason, do you think? To destroy Israel. They hate the Zionist state. All right, let's go on. Back to Zechariah, if you would, please. Zechariah, verse 8, chapter 12, verse 8. It shall come to pass, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Chapter 12, verse 8. In that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. He that is feeble among them in that day shall be as David. The house of David shall be as God, as the angel of the Lord before them. Now, I'm learning how it is to be feeble. I'm blind, half blind. I can't walk. And at 72 years old, I feel real feeble. Okay? That's just the way it is when you get old. Some of us don't get that way, but I did. I can't do steps. I can't hardly walk. I can't drive. I'm feeble. But that's the way it is. What do you expect? I never thought I'd live this long anyhow, you know. My dad died at 59, my sister at 52. I'm just feeble. So you got to pray for Ruth because she has to do almost everything. I can't even carry a case of water into the house. I'm feeble. But what does this say? The people that are going to be feeble are going to be like David's. Now, who did David kill? Goliath. Was he feeble? No, he was a mighty, mighty man. So basically, all the people in Jerusalem that are feeble are going to be strengthened. It's going to be a town of David's. Now, let's see what we have here. Verse 9, and it shall come to pass in that day, the day of the Lord when Jesus comes back, that I will seek to destroy all the nations that have come against Jerusalem. Who's going to escape in the world? Nobody. Verse 10, and I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. They shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. Now, do you see where it says, I will pour upon the house of David? And upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the what? What's it say? Spirit of grace. Could that be that the Jewish people are going to come to know who the Messiah is? He's going to pour on them the Spirit of grace. And they're going to understand for the first time who the Messiah is. Ask a Jewish person about the Messiah. Oh, he hasn't come yet. He hasn't come yet, but we know different, don't we? And God is going to pour on the entire inhabitants of Jerusalem his spirit of grace. This is the first step in them coming to the Lord. Verse 11, in that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad in the valley of Megiddon. And the land shall mourn, every family apart, family of the house of David apart, their wives apart, the family of the house of Nation apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Levi apart, and their wives apart, the family of Shimei apart, and the wives apart. All the families that remain, every family apart, and their wives apart. What's all that mean? In a time of great victory, what do most people do? Celebrate, have a big gathering. What are the Jewish people doing? What's it say? They're mourning. Now, why is that? Because they finally realize who Jesus was. And they realized what they did. They rejected him. They killed him. And they're finally realizing who the Messiah is, and they're mourning. And the thing I want you to see here is in verse 12. It's not a national day of mourning like we have a national day of prayer. Every single family, individually, is mourning because they've just realized who the Messiah is. Now, if you look in verse 11, or verse 15, in that day there shall be a fountain opened to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. What's that mean? There's a fountain opened, and they're going to what? Accept who Jesus is. It shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land. There shall be no more remembered. Also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. What was the Jewish people's biggest problem? They started to worship idols. They started to listen to false prophets, and they're all gone. They're all gone. It shall come to pass, verse 3, that when any shall prophesy, then his father and his mother that begot him shall say unto him, Thou shalt not live, for thou speakest lies in the name of the Lord. There seems to be a revival in the nation of Israel. They got the spirit of grace. They're mourning because they realized that they've rejected the Messiah and they killed him. And now they're getting rid of the sin. What does that sound like? They come into the Lord after all these years. Verse 4, it shall come to pass in that day that the prophets shall be ashamed, every one of them, of his vision. When he hath prophesied, neither shall they wear a rough garment to deceive. There's coming a time when 2/3 of the nation of Israel are going to be killed. But the 1/3 that remains, what are they going to do? Enter into the kingdom and come to know the Lord. Verse 8, it shall come to pass that in that land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, will refine them as silver is refined, will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, I will hear them. I will say it is my people, and they shall say what? The Lord is my God. Isn't that amazing? How many Jewish people today will say, the Lord is my God? Not many. In this day, they're going to come to know who the Messiah is. All right? Now look at, if you would, chapter 14, verse 4. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem, on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. There shall be a very great valley. Half of the mountains shall be removed toward the north and half toward the south. Now here's what's going to happen. Jesus is coming back. All the world has gathered. He's going to come back on his white horse with us, and he's going to judge the nations. And he's going to kill them all because they're ungodly, because they hate Israel and they hate his people. That's what's going to happen. But eventually, they're going. 1/3 of them is going to say, "The Lord is our God." Wow. So, what's the future of Israel? Anybody know? National salvation for 1/3 of them. Did you know that before? This is what Zechariah is prophesying. Now, I know that many of us have scorned the Jewish people. I know many of us have told jokes about the Jews and have preconceived ideas that they're all rich and they're running the world. That's called anti-Semitism. But we're not to hate Zionism or the nation state of Israel. Right now, our country is aligning itself with nations all around Israel to do harm to Israel. Iran, we gave them billions of dollars. We're in the middle right now of the nuclear deal with Iran, Saudi Arabia. All these nations hate the Jews. And what are we doing as a country right now? We're aligning ourselves with them. What should we be doing? Standing up for them. And we're not. What's the Bible say about people that don't align themselves with the Jewish nation? Pardon me? Right. So what are we heading for? A curse. A curse. Just so you're aware of that. Right now, the world is in turmoil. Chinese jets have just flown over Taiwan for the second time in 2 days. There's going to be a war with Taiwan and China. And we are Taiwan's ally, supposedly. We used to be. Taiwan makes 95% of the computer chips in the whole world. Do we want to lose them? No. I believe, this is my own opinion, that someday China will invade Taiwan and we're going to allow them to do it. And the next step is we're going to wake up one morning and all have to speak Chinese. That's my opinion. And that's what's going to happen to us if we continue on the path we're going. That's basically it. But thank God for the Jewish people. They're his people. He made promise after promise and covenant after covenant with them. He's not going to let them down. What covenant did he ever make with us? Nothing. He can stop blessing us. And one reason why he can is because we don't bless the nation of Israel. Questions or comments? I'm sorry I went a little longer this morning. Any questions or comments? Did you learn anything this morning? I hope so. All right, one more song and we'll go.